The vast expanse of the Alaskan wilderness stretched out before Dr. Elara Vega, a glittering blanket of pristine snow, broken only by the jagged silhouettes of distant mountains. The chill wind bit at her exposed skin as she adjusted her pack, double-checking the readings on her handheld scanner. As its xenobiologist, Elara had always dreamed of first contact with alien life. She never imagined it would happen in her own backyard. 3 days ago, her instruments had picked up an anomalous energy signature deep in the Alaskan interior. Now, after a grueling trek through some of the most unforgiving terrain on Earth, she was closing in on the source. Her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Was this it? The moment that would change everything? As Elara crested a snow-covered hill, her breath caught in her throat. There, nestled in a small valley, was an object that defied explanation. Its sleek, silvery hull gleamed in the weak Arctic sunlight, its curves and angles unlike anything of human design. It was unmistakably a spacecraft, and it was unmistakably alien. Approaching cautiously, Elara's scientific mind warred with her survival instincts. The ship appeared to have crash-landed, its hull marred by scorch marks and deep gashes. A trail of debris led away from the main body of the craft, scattered across the snowy landscape like breadcrumbs. "Hello," Elara called out, her voice sounding small and insignificant in the vast emptiness. "Is anyone there? Do you need help?" For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a soft groan reached her ears, barely audible over the wind. Elara's heart leaped into her throat as she scrambled towards the sound, her boots crunching through the snow. There, half buried in a snowdrift, lay a figure. At first glance, it appeared almost human, but as Elara drew closer, the differences became apparent. The being's skin was a pale lavender, shimmering with an almost metallic sheen. Its features were delicate, almost crystalline in their beauty, framed by hair that seemed to shift color like an aurora. As Elara knelt beside the alien, its eyes fluttered open, revealing irises of swirling silver. The being's gaze locked onto Elara, a mix of fear and desperation evident in its expression. "Please," the alien whispered, its voice melodic despite the obvious pain. "Help me." Elara's training kicked in, overriding her shock. She began to assess the alien's injuries, noting the strange, iridescent fluid that seeped from a gash in its side. "It's okay," she soothed, her voice calm despite the surreal situation. "I'm here to help. Can you understand me?" The alien nodded weakly. "Universal. Translator," it managed, gesturing to a small device affixed to its throat. "You, human?" "Yes," Elara replied, carefully applying pressure to the wound. "My name is Elara. I'm a scientist. Can you tell me your name?" "Lysandra," the alien replied, wincing. "Princess Lysandra of the Stellar Concordat. I didn't mean to come here. My ship was attacked. Sabotaged." Elara's mind reeled at the implications. Not only had she made first contact with an alien species, but apparently with royalty from an interstellar civilization. Attacked by whom? Lysandra's expression darkened. "Traitors. Within my own court, they seek to prevent the alliance." Before Elara could ask for clarification, a low, menacing growl echoed through the valley. She turned, her blood running cold at the sight before her. 3 massive creatures stood at the edge of the crash site, their fur a mottled white that blended seamlessly with the snowy landscape. They were unlike any Earth predator Elara had ever seen, with 6 powerful legs and elongated jaws filled with needle-sharp teeth. "Voidhounds," Lysandra whispered, her voice filled with terror. "They must have followed my ship through the rift. We have to run." Elara glanced between the approaching predators and the injured alien princess. Running didn't seem like much of an option. Her hand went to the flare gun at her hip, her only weapon in this frozen wasteland. "Can you stand?" Elara asked, her mind racing through possible escape routes. Lysandra struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on Elara for support. "Not for long," she admitted, But I can fight. My people are stronger than we look." As if to prove her point, Lysandra raised her hand, and a shimmering field of energy coalesced around them both. The nearest voidhound leaped forward, only to be repelled by the barrier with a yelp of pain. "It won't hold for long," Lysandra warned, her voice strained. "Do you have a plan, human?" Ilara's gaze darted around the crash site, taking in the scattered debris and the looming bulk of the alien ship. An idea began to form, crazy, dangerous, but possibly their only chance. "I might," she replied, a grim smile tugging at her lips. "But you're going to have to trust me, and it's going to get a little weird." Lysandra met Ilara's eyes, a spark of understanding passing between them. Two beings from different worlds, thrust together by circumstance, now relying on each other for survival. "Lead the way, Ilara of Earth," the princess said. "I place my life in your hands." With the voidhounds circling and Lysandra's energy barrier weakening by the second, Ilara knew they had only one shot at this. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. It was time to show this alien princess what humans were truly capable of when pushed to their limits. "All right," Ilara said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "When I say now, drop the barrier and be ready to move fast. We're going to make a run for your ship." Lysandra nodded, her silver eyes wide but determined. The voidhounds snarled and paced, their massive forms tensed to strike the moment the energy field fell. Ilara reached for her flare gun, aiming it high into the air. "Now," she shouted. In an instant, several things happened at once. Lysandra dropped the energy barrier, stumbling slightly as she did so. Ilara fired the flare, the bright red light streaking across the sky with a piercing whistle, and the voidhounds, momentarily startled by the sudden noise and light, hesitated just long enough for Ilara and Lysandra to make a desperate dash towards the crashed spacecraft. The snow crunched beneath their feet as they ran, Ilara half carrying the injured princess. Behind them, the voidhounds recovered quickly, their howls echoing across the frozen landscape as they gave chase. Almost there, Ilara gasped, her lungs burning from the exertion and the frigid air. The open hatch of Lysandra's ship loomed before them, a dark maw that promised either salvation or a dead end. Just as they reached the ship's entrance, Ilara felt a searing pain across her back. One of the voidhounds had closed the distance, its claws raking through her thick jacket. She stumbled, nearly losing her grip on Lysandra. "Ilara," the princess cried out, her voice filled with concern. Gritting her teeth against the pain, Ilara managed to haul them both inside the ship. "Close it," she yelled, fumbling for any sort of control panel. Lysandra's hand shot out, touching a glowing symbol on the wall. The hatch slid shut with a hiss, mere seconds before the voidhounds slammed into it. The entire ship shuddered with the impact, but the alien metal held firm. For a moment, the only sound was their ragged breathing and the muffled snarls of the creatures outside. Then Lysandra turned to Ilara, her expression a mixture of gratitude and worry. "You're injured," she said, reaching out to examine the tears in Ilara's jacket. Ilara waved her off, her scientific curiosity overtaking the pain as she took in her surroundings. The interior of the ship was unlike anything she had ever seen, all smooth curves and pulsing bioluminescent lights. "I'll be fine," she assured the princess. "But we need to figure out our next move. Those things aren't going to give up easily." Lysandra nodded, her regal bearing returning now that the immediate danger had passed. "You're right, and we have more to worry about than just the voidhounds. If my enemies learn I survived the crash, they'll send more than beasts to finish the job." Ilara's mind reeled at the implications. "Your enemies? You mentioned traitors earlier. What's really going on here, Lysandra?" The alien princess sighed, her form seeming to deflate slightly. "It's complicated. My people, the Australians, have long debated whether to make contact with other sentient species. Some, like myself, believe in the potential for peaceful cooperation and mutual growth. Others fear that outsiders will bring nothing but war and destruction to our realm. And let me guess, Elara said, a wry smile on her face. You were on some sort of diplomatic mission when you were attacked. Lysandra nodded, a look of surprise crossing her features. You're perceptive, Elara of Earth. Yes, I was on my way to a secret meeting with representatives from several other species. We hoped to form an alliance, a united front against the isolationists within our respective governments. But somehow, my enemies learned of the plan. Elara's scientific mind was working overtime, processing the implications of what she was hearing. So now we're stuck here, on a planet that doesn't even know aliens exist, with assassins potentially on their way. That about sums it up, Lysandra replied, a hint of gallows humor in her voice. Though I must say, if all humans are as resourceful as you, perhaps there's hope for us yet. Before Elara could respond, a series of lights began flashing on what appeared to be the ship's main control panel. Lysandra hobbled over to it, her expression growing grave as she read the alien symbols. What is it? Elara asked, moving to join her. A distress beacon, Lysandra explained. Activated when my ship crashed. It's been transmitting our location this whole time. Elara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Arctic cold. Can you shut it off? Lysandra shook her head. It's hardwired into the ship's core systems. But that's not the worst part. Look at this. She pointed to a pulsing red icon on the display. What am I looking at? Elara asked, squinting at the unfamiliar symbols. That, Lysandra said grimly, is an Australian warship on an intercept course with Earth, and given recent events, I very much doubt they're coming to rescue me. Elara's mind raced through the possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. An alien invasion force descending on an unsuspecting Earth. The potential for global panic, for violence on an unprecedented scale. And at the center of it all, a human scientist and an alien princess, the only ones with any hope of averting disaster. How long do we have? Elara asked, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. Lysandra's fingers danced over the control panel, bringing up a series of calculations. At their current speed, less than 6 hours before they enter Earth's atmosphere. Elara took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. Then we've got work to do. You said your ship was sabotaged. Any chance we can get it flying again? A spark of hope flickered in Lysandra's silver eyes. With your help, it's possible. But Elara, you must understand, if we succeed, if we manage to leave this planet, you may never be able to return. The risks would be too great, both for you and for Earth. For a moment, Elara hesitated. Everything she had ever known, her entire life's work, was on this planet. But then she thought of the alternative, a hostile alien force descending on an unprepared world. Her decision was made in an instant. Well, Elara said, a determined grin spreading across her face, I always did want to see the stars up close. Let's get to work, Your Highness. We've got a planet to save and a galaxy to explore. As they set to work on repairing the ship, the Void Hands continued to howl outside, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurked in the vastness of space. But for Elara Vega, human scientist turned reluctant hero, it was the beginning of an adventure beyond her wildest dreams. The fate of 2 worlds now rested in her hands, and she was determined not to let either of them down. Journey to the stars. The alien ship shuddered and groaned as Elara and Lysandra worked frantically to repair its damaged systems. Outside, the howls of the Voidhounds had faded, replaced by an eerie silence that was somehow even more unnerving. Time was running out, and both human and Austrian knew it. How's it looking over there? Elara called out, her voice muffled as she contorted herself into a small access panel. Earth technology might be primitive compared to Lysandra's, but Elara's problem-solving skills were proving invaluable. Lysandra's melodic voice drifted back, tinged with a mix of admiration and frustration. Your solution for the power coupling is unorthodox, but effective. I believe we're close to achieving minimal flight capability. Ilara emerged from the panel, her face smeared with a mixture of grease and the strange, iridescent fluid that seemed to serve as the ship's lifeblood. Unorthodox is what we humans do best, she grinned, especially when our backs are against the wall. As if to emphasize her point, a low rumble echoed through the valley, causing both of them to freeze. Ilara rushed to the nearest viewport, her heart sinking at what she saw. In the distance, dark shapes were moving across the snow-covered landscape, vehicles of some kind, and definitely not the standard fare for the Alaskan wilderness. "Looks like we've got company," Ilara said grimly. "And something tells me they're not here for a friendly chat." Lysandra joined her at the viewport, her silver eyes narrowing. "The advanced scout for the warship, no doubt. We must leave now, ready or not." They scrambled to the control center, Lysandra's fingers flying over the alien interface as Ilara strapped herself into what she hoped was the equivalent of a passenger seat. The ship's systems came to life around them, pulsing with an otherworldly energy that made Ilara's hair stand on end. "Hang on," Lysandra warned, gripping the controls. "This may be less than smooth." The ship lurched upward with a bone-jarring jolt, nearly sending Ilara tumbling from her seat. Through the viewports, she could see the snowy ground falling away at an alarming rate. The approaching vehicles opened fire, energy bolts sizzling through the air around them. "Can this thing go any faster?" Ilara shouted, her knuckles white as she gripped her seat. Lysandra's face was a mask of concentration. "Pushing the engines any harder could cause a total system failure. We just need to break atmosphere, then we can." Her words were cut off as a massive tremor rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed across the control panel, and for a heart-stopping moment, they began to lose altitude. "No, no, no," Lysandra muttered, her hands dancing across the controls. "Not now, please." Ilara's mind raced. They were so close. She could see the sky darkening above them, the curvature of the earth becoming visible. In that moment, an idea struck her. "The power coupling," she shouted. "If we reroute all non-essential power, maybe we can give the engines one last boost." Lysandra's eyes widened in understanding. "It's risky, but do it." Ilara unstrapped herself, stumbling across the lurching deck to the access panel she had been working on earlier. With trembling hands, she began reconnecting wires and rerouting power conduits, praying to whatever cosmic forces might be listening that her improvised engineering would hold. "Now," she yelled, slamming the panel shut. Lysandra engaged the engines, and the ship surged forward with renewed vigor. The force of acceleration slammed Ilara against the bulkhead, stars dancing in her vision. But through the spots in her eyes, she could see it, the inky blackness of space, studded with countless pinpricks of light. They had made it. As the immediate danger passed, Ilara felt the full weight of what had just happened crash over her. She had left Earth, possibly forever, on an alien spaceship, with an alien princess, and was now hurtling through the cosmos towards who knew what. "Are you all right?" Lysandra's concerned voice broke through Ilara's daze. Ilara managed a weak chuckle, just processing. It's not every day a girl goes from studying xenobiology to becoming part of it. Lysandra's expression softened. "I cannot thank you enough for what you've done, Ilara. You've saved my life twice over now, and potentially averted a galactic incident, but I fear our troubles are far from over." As if on cue, a series of beeps emanated from the control panel. Lysandra's face paled as she read the incoming data. "The warship," she said grimly. "It's changed course. They're pursuing us." Ilara felt a chill run down her spine. How long until they catch up? Lysandra's fingers danced over the controls, bringing up a holographic display that showed their position relative to their pursuers. "At our current speed, perhaps a few hours, but there may be a way to lose them if you're willing to take another risk." Ilara couldn't help but laugh. "At this point, Your Highness, I think we're well past worrying about risks. What did you have in mind?" Lysandra pointed to a swirling vortex of color on the display. A quantum fissure. It's a natural phenomenon that allows for near-instantaneous travel across vast distances of space. If we can reach it before the warship, we might be able to throw them off our trail. Sounds like a plan, Ilara nodded. But something tells me it's not going to be that simple. Indeed not, Lysandra admitted. Navigating a quantum fissure is extremely dangerous. Many ships have been lost attempting such a feat, and even if we succeed, there's no telling where or when we might emerge. Ilara took a deep breath, considering their options. Stay and fight against a vastly superior force, or leap into the unknown with only the slimmest chance of survival. When she put it that way, the choice was clear. Well, she said with a grin that was equal parts excitement and terror, I did always want to be an explorer. Let's do it. As Lysandra set a course for the quantum fissure, Ilara found herself staring out at the star-studded expanse before them. Each point of light represented a potential world filled with wonders and dangers beyond imagination. And she, Ilara Vega of Earth, was about to dive headlong into that cosmic ocean. The next few hours passed in a blur of tense silence and frantic activity. Lysandra taught Ilara the basics of the ship's systems, knowing that in the chaos of navigating the fissure, she might need the humans' help. In turn, Ilara shared what she knew of Earth's sciences, filling in gaps in the Astrians' knowledge of her adopted world. As they worked and taught, Ilara couldn't help but notice the differences between them. Lysandra moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost supernatural, her skin shimmering with subtle bioluminescence that shifted with her moods. Her thought processes were alien too, leaps of logic that left Ilara struggling to keep up, balanced by moments of charming naivety about concepts humans took for granted. Yet, for all their differences, Ilara found herself drawn to the alien princess. Lysandra's curiosity about Earth and its people matched Ilara's own fascination with alien life. They swapped stories, Ilara's tales of her expeditions in Earth's wildest places, Lysandra's accounts of growing up in the glittering courts of distant worlds. In those quiet moments between crises, a friendship began to blossom, bridging the gap between their two species. But reality soon intruded on their bonding session. The warship was gaining on them, its superior engines eating away at the lead Ilara and Lysandra had gained in their desperate escape from Earth. We're almost there, Lysandra announced, her voice tight with tension. On the viewscreen, the quantum fissure loomed before them, a writhing tear in the fabric of space-time, shot through with colors Ilara's mind struggled to process. That's our ticket out of here, Ilara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The sight filled her with equal parts awe and terror. Lysandra nodded grimly. Indeed. Brace yourself, Ilara. This will not be pleasant. The ship shuddered as a bolt of energy from the pursuing warship grazed their shields. Alarms blared throughout the vessel, adding to the chaos of the moment. Here we go, Lysandra shouted, ramming the controls forward. Ilara's world exploded into a kaleidoscope of impossible colors and sensations. She felt herself being stretched and compressed, torn apart and reassembled on a molecular level. Time lost all meaning. Seconds stretched into eternities, years compressed into heartbeats. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it was over. The ship burst out of the quantum fissure into normal space, systems flickering and alarms still blaring. Ilara found herself on the floor, every nerve in her body screaming in protest of what she'd just endured. Did we make it? She managed to croak out, struggling to her feet. Lysandra was slumped over the controls, her luminescent skin flickering weakly. I think so, she replied, her voice barely audible. But I don't recognize these star patterns. We could be anywhere in the galaxy. As Ilara helped Lysandra into a more comfortable position, she caught sight of something through the viewscreen that made her breath catch in her throat. There, suspended in the void before them, was a massive space station, a glittering jewel of technology unlike anything Ilara had ever seen or imagined. Lysandra, she whispered, gently shaking the princess, I think we found your meeting place. The Astrian's eyes widened as she took in the sight. The Nexus, she breathed. The hidden capital of the galactic concord. Ilara, do you know what this means? Ilara shook her head, still transfixed by the otherworldly beauty of the station. Lysandra's face broke into a weary but triumphant smile. It means, my friend, that we've just changed the course of galactic history. The Alliance lives on, and humanity has just earned its seat at the table. As their battered ship limped towards the Nexus, Ilara felt a mixture of emotions wash over her: exhaustion, exhilaration, and a deep sense of trepidation about what was to come. She had left behind everything she knew to save her world, only to find herself thrust into the heart of an interstellar political crisis. But as she looked at Lysandra, seeing the hope and determination in the alien princess's eyes, Ilara knew she had made the right choice. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, a human and an Austrian, united in their quest for peace among the stars. The Nexus grew larger in their view screen, its gleaming spires and swirling energy fields promising wonders and dangers beyond imagination. Ilara Vega, once a simple xenobiologist from Earth, now found herself on the threshold of a new chapter in galactic history. And as their ship docked with the massive station, she couldn't help but smile at the sheer audacity of it all. The adventure, it seemed, was only just beginning. Arrival at the alien homeworld. The docking process was smoother than Ilara expected, given the battered state of their ship. As the airlock hissed open, she found herself holding her breath, unsure of what, or who, might be waiting for them. "Stay close to me," Lysandra whispered, her regal bearing returning despite her obvious exhaustion. "The Nexus is neutral ground, but we can't be certain who might have infiltrated its ranks." Ilara nodded, acutely aware of how out of place she must look, a human in torn and dirty clothing, emerging from a ship that looked like it had been through a war, which, she supposed, wasn't far from the truth. As they stepped onto the pristine deck of the Nexus, Ilara's senses were overwhelmed. The air hummed with energy, carrying scents both familiar and utterly alien. Beings of all shapes, sizes, and colors moved through the vast atrium, some hurrying on inscrutable errands, others engaged in animated discussions in languages her universal translator couldn't begin to decipher. "By all the stars," a booming voice called out, causing both Ilara and Lysandra to jump. "Princess Lysandra, we had feared the worst when your ship vanished from our scopes." A towering figure approached them, its body a shimmering mass of what looked like liquid metal. Despite its alien appearance, Ilara could sense a warmth in its glowing eyes as it regarded Lysandra. "Ambassador Zix," Lysandra greeted the being, her voice filled with relief. "It gladdens my heart to see you. We have much to discuss and little time." The ambassador's gaze shifted to Ilara, curiosity evident in the swerving patterns across its surface. "And who is your companion? I don't believe we had the pleasure of meeting her species before." Lysandra straightened, her voice taking on a formal tone. "Ambassador, may I present Dr. Ilara Vega of Earth. She saved my life and has proven herself a valuable ally. Ilara, this is Ambassador Zix of the Collective, one of our strongest supporters in the push for galactic unity." Ilara managed a small bow, hoping it was the right gesture. "It's an honor to meet you, Ambassador." Zix's form rippled in what Ilara guessed was their version of a smile. "The honor is mine, Dr. Vega. Any friend of Princess Lysandra is a friend of the Collective. But come, we must get you both to safety. Your arrival has set quite a few tongues wagging, both organic and synthetic." As they followed Zix through the winding corridors of the Nexus, Ilara couldn't help but marvel at the advanced technologies surrounding them. Holographic displays flickered to life as they passed, showing star charts and data streams she could barely comprehend. Robots of various designs moved alongside organic beings, their interactions seamless and natural. "It's incredible," Ilara murmured to Lysandra. "I feel like I've stepped into one of our science fiction stories." Lysandra smiled, though Ilara noticed the tension in her eyes. The Nexus represents the pinnacle of cooperative achievement among the allied species. But for all its wonders, it's also hopped of political intrigue. We must tread carefully. They arrived at what appeared to be a secure conference room. As the doors sealed behind them, Elara felt some of the tension leave Lyssandra's shoulders. "Now then," Zix said, their form settling into a more humanoid shape. "Perhaps you can enlighten us on what transpired. Your disappearance caused quite a stir, Princess. Some factions were all too quick to point fingers at their rivals." Lysandra's expression hardened. "It was no accident, Ambassador. My ship was sabotaged, and I narrowly escaped an assassination attempt. If not for Elara's intervention, I fear I would not be standing here now." Zix's surface roiled with what Elara interpreted as concern. "This is grave news indeed. Do you have any proof? Any idea who might be behind this treachery?" "I have my suspicions," Lysandra replied, her voice low. "But without concrete evidence, accusing anyone could spark a diplomatic incident we can ill afford." As Lysandra and Zix delved into the intricacies of galactic politics, Elara found her scientific mind racing. She began to pace the room, examining the various displays and instruments, her fingers itching to understand how they worked. "And that's when we made the jump through the quantum fissure," Lysandra was saying. "It was a desperate gamble, but—" "Wait," Elara interrupted, a thought suddenly striking her. "The quantum fissure. Lysandra, you said your ship's systems recorded data from our journey, right?" The princess nodded, looking puzzled. "Yes, but much of it was corrupted by the stress of the jump." "Why?" Elara's eyes lit up with excitement. "On Earth, we have a concept called quantum entanglement. Particles that have interacted maintain a connection, even when separated by vast distances. What if the sabotage of your ship left a similar quantum fingerprint? If we could isolate and analyze the corrupted data, we might be able to trace it back to its source." Zix and Lysandra exchanged glances, a mixture of surprise and admiration on their faces. "Is such a thing possible?" Zix asked, their forms shimmering with interest. Lysandra smiled, a hint of pride in her voice. "If anyone could make it work, it's Elara. Her, what did you call it? Unorthodox approach has already saved us once." Over the next several hours, Elara found herself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Word of her theory spread quickly through the Nexus, and soon she was collaborating with some of the brightest scientific minds in the galaxy. Despite the language barriers and vast differences in their base knowledge, Elara was surprised to find how quickly they fell into a rhythm of shared discovery. As they worked, Elara couldn't help but notice sidelong glances and whispered conversations that seemed to follow Lysandra wherever she went. The princess put on a brave face, but Elara could see the toll it was taking on her. "Are you okay?" Elara asked during a rare quiet moment as they waited for a particularly complex analysis to complete. Lysandra sighed, her luminescent skin dimming slightly. "I spent my entire life preparing for this moment, the chance to forge a lasting peace between our peoples. But now that I'm here, I feel overwhelmed. There are so many forces at work, so many competing interests. And now, with this assassination attempt..." Elara placed a comforting hand on Lysandra's shoulder, marveling at the subtle warmth and vibration she felt beneath her fingers. "Hey, you're not alone in this. I may not understand all the political nuances, but I've got your back. We'll figure this out together." A small smile tugged at Lysandra's lips. "Thank you, Elara. Your presence here, it gives me hope. Perhaps this is the start of something truly remarkable." Their moment was interrupted by a commotion at the lab's entrance. A group of regal-looking Astrains swept into the room, their faces set in stern expressions. Princess Lysandra, the leader of the group, intoned, his voice dripping with barely concealed disdain. "The High Council demands your presence immediately. It seems we have much to discuss regarding your unauthorized excursion." Lysandra straightened, every inch the royal she was born to be. "Of course, Councillor Vax. I would be happy to address the Council's concerns." As Lysandra moved to follow the delegation, Elara felt a spike of worry. Something about the way Vax had looked at her friend set off alarm bells in her head. "Wait," Elara called out, surprising herself with her boldness. "I'm coming too." Vax turned, his silver eyes narrowing as he regarded Elara. "This is a matter for the Australian High Council, human. Your presence is neither required nor desired." Elara stood her ground, channeling every ounce of confidence she could muster. "With all due respect, Councillor, I was there when the assassination attempt occurred. My testimony could be crucial to understanding what happened, and as the representative of a potential new ally in your galactic community, I believe I have a right to observe these proceedings." For a tense moment, Elara thought Vax might refuse. But then, to her surprise, a thin smile spread across his face. "Very well, Dr. Vega. If you insist on involving yourself in our affairs, who am I to stand in your way? But I warn you, the politics of our people can be treacherous for the uninitiated." As they made their way to the council chambers, Elara couldn't shake the feeling that she had just stepped onto a much larger and more dangerous stage than she had ever imagined. The fate of not just two worlds, but an entire galaxy might hinge on what transpired in the coming hours. Glancing at Lysandra, Elara saw a mixture of gratitude and concern in her friend's eyes. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, a human scientist and an alien princess, united in their quest for truth and justice among the stars. The doors to the council chamber loomed before them, ornate and imposing. As they swung open, Elara took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. The next chapter of their adventure was about to begin, and she had a feeling it would be the most perilous yet. Uncovering the plot, the Australian High Council chamber was a marvel of alien architecture. Crystalline spires stretched towards a domed ceiling that seemed to ripple with the very fabric of space-time. Holographic displays flickered around the room, showing star systems and data streams that Elara could barely comprehend. As Lysandra took her place at the center of the chamber, Elara hung back, trying to make herself as inconspicuous as possible. The weight of alien gazes pressed down on her, a mixture of curiosity and suspicion evident in their otherworldly eyes. Princess Lysandra, a venerable Austrian, spoke, his voice resonating with authority. "We are relieved to see you safe, but your actions have raised concerns among the council. Explain yourself." Lysandra stood tall, her luminescent skin pulsing with barely contained emotion. "Honored councillors, I come before you not just as your princess, but as a survivor of a deliberate attack on our people's future. My ship was sabotaged, my life threatened, all in an attempt to derail the alliance we have worked so hard to build." Murmurs rippled through the assembled aliens. Elara noticed Councillor Vax leaning in to whisper something to his neighbor, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "These are serious allegations," another council member spoke up. "Do you have any proof of this sabotage?" Lysandra hesitated, and Elara could see the weight of the moment pressing down on her friend. Before she could stop herself, Elara stepped forward. "If I may, honored council," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "We're working on uncovering evidence as we speak. The quantum resonance from the sabotage should leave a traceable signature, one that—" "And who?" Vax interrupted, his silver eyes narrowing. "Are you to speak in these hallowed chambers?" Lysandra quickly intervened. "This is Dr. Elara Vega of Earth. She saved my life and has proven herself a valuable ally. Her scientific expertise has been instrumental in our investigation." The council exchanged glances, a mixture of intrigue and skepticism on their alien faces. "Earth," the elder councillor mused. "We know little of your world, Dr. Vega. Perhaps you could enlighten us on how a primitive species such as yours came to be involved in matters of galactic importance." Elara bristled at the primitive comment, but kept her cool. "With respect, councillor, sometimes an outside perspective can see things that those too close to a situation might miss. On Earth, we have a saying, 'Can't see the forest for the trees.' It means—" "We understand metaphor, human, Vax cut in, his tone dripping with condescension. "What we fail to understand is how your primitive science could possibly uncover what our advanced technology cannot." A spark of defiance ignited in Ilara's chest. "Sometimes, Counselor, it's not about having the most advanced technology. It's about asking the right questions. For instance, why was Princess Lysandra's ship the only one affected by this sabotage? Who stood to gain the most from her disappearance? And why are some members of this council so quick to dismiss the possibility of an inside threat?" A hush fell over the chamber. Ilara realized she might have overstepped, but to her surprise, she saw approving nods from several council members. "Bold words, Dr. Vega," the elder counselor said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Perhaps there is more to your species than we initially thought. Very well, you may continue your investigation, but know that the eyes of the council will be upon you." As the session adjourned, Ilara felt a mix of relief and trepidation. She had stood her ground, but she knew she had also made enemies today. Lysandra approached her, a proud smile on her face. "That was impressive, Ilara. You've given us the time we need, but we must act quickly. Vax and his allies won't sit idle while we investigate." Over the next few days, Ilara threw herself into the investigation with a fervor that surprised even her. She worked alongside Astrian scientists and engineers, her primitive human insights often providing the key to unlocking new avenues of inquiry. It was during one of these late-night research sessions that Ilara had her breakthrough. She was poring over the corrupted data from Lysandra's ship when a pattern caught her eye. "Lysandra," she called out, excitement bubbling in her voice. "I think I found something." The princess hurried over, her bioluminescence brightening with interest. "What is it?" Ilara pointed to a series of fluctuations in the data stream. "See these spikes? They're not random. There's a pattern here, almost like a signature." Lysandra's eyes widened as she studied the display. By the cosmic winds, she breathed. "I recognize this pattern. It's an old Australian military code, one that hasn't been used in generations. But how?" A cold realization settled over them both. "Someone with access to classified historical records," Ilara said softly. "Someone high up in the Austrian hierarchy." Before they could discuss further, the lab's doors hissed open. Ambassador Zix glided in, their liquid metal form rippling with urgency. "Princess, Dr. Vega," Zix said, their voice uncharacteristically grave. "We've received word. The isolationist faction is making its move. They're calling for an emergency session of the Galactic Concord to vote on expelling all primitive species from alliance negotiations." Ilara felt her heart sink. They're trying to force Earth out of the picture. Lysandra's face hardened with determination. "We can't let that happen. Zix, can you delay the vote? We need more time to present our evidence." The ambassador's form shimmered with uncertainty. "I'll do what I can, but our allies are wavering. They need something concrete, and soon." As Zix left to make their diplomatic rounds, Ilara turned to Lysandra. "We're close to cracking this, I can feel it. But we're missing something, some key piece of the puzzle." Lysandra nodded, her brow furrowed in thought. "Perhaps it's time we took a more direct approach. The Royal Archives might hold the answers we seek, but accessing them without authorization would be seen as an act of treason." Ilara couldn't help but grin. "Good thing you've got a primitive human on your side then. We tend to be pretty good at thinking outside the box." As they formulated their plan, neither of them noticed the small drone hovering in the corner of the lab, its recording light blinking steadily. Hours later, as Ilara and Lysandra crept through the darkened corridors of the Royal Archives, the true scale of their mission began to sink in. If they were caught, it could mean the end of not just their investigation, but of the entire alliance. "Here," Lysandra whispered, gesturing to an ornate terminal. "This should give us access to the classified records." As Lysandra's fingers danced over the alien interface, Ilara kept watch, her nerves on edge. Suddenly, a noise from behind made her spin around. Well, well, a familiar voice drawled, "What have we here?" Counselor Vax stepped out of the shadows, flanked by two armed guards. His silver eyes gleamed with triumph. "Counselor," Lysandra began, but Vax cut her off with a wave of his hand. "Save your excuses, Princess. We have you on record plotting to access restricted files. A clear act of treason, wouldn't you agree?" Ilara's mind raced. How had he known they would be here? Unless it was you, she blurted out, the pieces falling into place. "You're the one who sabotaged Lysandra's ship. You're behind all of this." Vax's smile was cold and mirthless. "Clever little human. It's almost a shame to have to eliminate you. You might have made an interesting test subject." As the guards raised their weapons, time seemed to slow for Ilara. In that moment, she realized that the fate of not just Earth, but countless worlds across the galaxy hung in the balance. Whatever happened next would change the course of history forever. With a deep breath, Ilara prepared herself for what was to come. The true battle for the future of the Alliance was about to begin, and she was determined to see it through to the end. Battle for the throne time seemed to stretch as Ilara stared down the barrel of the guard's weapon. In that frozen moment, her mind raced through a dozen scenarios, each more unlikely than the last. But it was Lysandra who acted first. With a fluid motion that seemed almost too fast for Ilara's eyes to follow, the Austrian princess reached out and touched a hidden panel on the archive's wall. Suddenly, the room was plunged into darkness, the only light coming from Lysandra's softly glowing skin. "Run!" Lysandra hissed, grabbing Ilara's hand and pulling her towards a concealed exit. The sounds of confusion and anger erupted behind them as they fled through the winding corridors of the royal complex. Alarms began to blare, bathing the hallways in pulsing red light. "We need to get to the communication hub," Lysandra panted as they ran. "If we can broadcast the evidence we've gathered to the entire Concord, Vax won't be able to cover this up." Ilara nodded, her scientific mind already formulating a plan. "If we can access the quantum entanglement network, we might be able to bypass any communication blocks they try to put up." As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with a group of loyalist guards. For a moment, both parties froze in surprise. Then chaos erupted. "Protect the princess," one of the guards shouted, moving to form a protective circle around Lysandra and Ilara. The air crackled with energy as weapons fire erupted from both sides. Ilara found herself pulled into the center of the guard formation, her heart pounding in her ears. "This way, Your Highness," the lead guard said, gesturing towards a reinforced door. "We can reach the communication hub through the service tunnels." As they made their way through the cramped, dimly lit tunnels, Ilara couldn't help but marvel at the turn of events. Here she was, a human scientist, caught in the middle of an alien coup. The absurdity of it all almost made her laugh. "I don't suppose your Earth military training covered situations like this?" Lysandra asked, a hint of gallows humor in her voice. Ilara snorted. Believe it or not, Alien Palace coup wasn't part of the curriculum, but we humans have a knack for improvisation. Speaking of which, she turned to the lead guard. "Do you have any kind of handheld scanning devices? Something that can detect energy signatures?" The guard looked puzzled, but produced a small disc-shaped object. "This is a standard multi-spectrum analyzer. Why?" A grin spread across Ilara's face. "Because we're about to set up the galaxy's biggest game of hide and seek." Over the next few minutes, as they hurried through the tunnels, Ilara outlined her plan. By recalibrating the scanners to detect the unique energy signature of Vax's weapons, the same signature they had traced from the sabotage, they could effectively track the movements of the conspirators throughout the complex. "It's like playing a real-time strategy game," Ilara explained, her eyes shining with excitement. "We'll be able to see their movements and plan our counterattacks accordingly." Lysandra looked impressed. "Ilara, you continue to amaze me. This could give us the edge we need." As they emerged from the tunnels near the communication hub, They were met with a scene of chaos. Loyalist and rebel forces clashed in the corridors, the air thick with weapons fire and shouted orders. "We need to clear a path to the main control room," Lysandra said, her voice taking on a commanding tone that Ilara hadn't heard before. "Once inside, we can initiate the broadcast and expose Vax's treachery." Ilara nodded, her mind racing. "I have an idea, but it's a bit unconventional. Do you trust me?" Lysandra's luminescent skin pulsed with what Ilara had come to recognize as affection. "With my life, my friend." With a quick explanation to the guards, Ilara set her plan in motion. Using the recalibrated scanners, they were able to pinpoint the locations of Vax's forces. Then, using a combination of misdirection, improvised smoke screens, courtesy of some creatively repurposed environmental systems, and good old-fashioned human unpredictability, they began to sow confusion among the enemy ranks. Ilara found herself in the thick of the action, shouting orders and coordinating movements with a confidence she didn't know she possessed. Her Earth tactics, so foreign to both sides of the conflict, proved devastatingly effective. The rebels, expecting a straightforward confrontation, were thrown into disarray by the guerrilla-style attacks. As they fought their way closer to the communication hub, Ilara caught glimpses of the larger battle raging throughout the complex. Loyalist forces, bolstered by their unexpected success, were pushing back against the rebels with renewed vigor. Finally, after what felt like hours of intense combat, they reached the doors of the main control room. But their victory was short-lived. As Lysandra moved to enter the access code, a familiar voice rang out. "I must admit, I'm impressed," Counselor Vax said, stepping out from behind a column, a high-powered energy weapon trained on them. "I never expected a primitive human to cause so much trouble." Ilara tensed, her mind racing for a way out of this standoff. But before she could act, something unexpected happened. Ambassador Zix suddenly materialized beside Vax, their liquid metal form rippling with barely contained anger. "That's quite enough, Counselor," they said, then a voice cold and hard. Vax's eyes widened in surprise. "Ambassador, what is the meaning of this?" "The meaning, Counselor," Zix replied, "is that your gambit has failed. While you were busy chasing the princess and her human friend, we were able to verify the evidence they uncovered. The Galactic Concord has been informed of your treachery." As if on cue, the sounds of approaching Loyalist forces echoed down the corridor. Vax's face contorted with rage and desperation. "No," he snarled, swinging his weapon towards Lysandra. "If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me." Time seemed to slow for Ilara. Without thinking, she launched herself at Lysandra, tackling the princess to the ground just as Vax fired. She felt a searing pain in her shoulder as the energy blast grazed her, but adrenaline kept her moving. In the chaos that followed, Ambassador Zix's liquid metal form engulfed Vax, neutralizing the threat. Loyalist guards poured into the area, securing the rogue counselor and his remaining forces. As the dust settled, Ilara found herself being helped to her feet by Lysandra, concern etched on the alien princess's face. "Ilara, are you all right? You're injured." Ilara managed a weak smile. "Just a scratch. Besides, I think I just fulfilled the ultimate human dream of saving an alien princess. My nerd cred is going to be off the charts." Lysandra laughed, a sound of pure relief and joy. "You impossible human, you've saved much more than just me today." As medical teams arrived and the situation began to stabilize, Ilara looked around at the aftermath of the battle. Austrians, humans, and a dozen other alien species were working together, tending to the wounded and securing the complex. In that moment, she realized that this crisis, as terrible as it had been, had forged something powerful, a true alliance built on trust and shared adversity. Ambassador Zix approached them, their forms still rippling with the aftermath of the confrontation. "Princess Lysandra, Dr. Vega, on behalf of the Galactic Concord, I thank you. Your actions today have not only saved the Alliance, but have opened the door for a new era of cooperation between our peoples." As the full impact of their victory began to sink in, Ilara felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. But mixed with the fatigue was a sense of excitement and wonder. The galaxy had been open to humanity, and she, Ilara Vega, had played a pivotal role in making it happen. Lysandra seemed to sense her thoughts. "This is just the beginning, isn't it?" the princess said softly. Ilara nodded, a smile spreading across her face despite the pain in her shoulder. "Oh yeah, I have a feeling the real adventure is only just starting." As they made their way to the medical bay, surrounded by the bustling activity of a dozen alien species working in harmony, Ilara couldn't help but feel a sense of immense pride and hope for the future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Earth and humanity were ready to take their place among the stars. A new era begins. The days following the coup attempt passed in a blur for Ilara. Between debriefings, medical treatments for her injured shoulder, and an endless stream of diplomatic meetings, she barely had time to process the monumental changes taking place around her. It was a week after the battle when Ilara found herself standing before the full assembly of the Galactic Concord. The Grand Chamber was filled to capacity, with representatives from hundreds of alien species in attendance. At the center of it all stood Lysandra, her luminescent skin glowing with a quiet intensity as she addressed the gathered delegates. Honored representatives of the Concord, Lysandra's voice rang out, clear and strong. "We stand at a crossroads in our shared history. The recent events have shown us both the fragility of our alliances and the strength we possess when we stand united." Ilara watched with pride as her friend deftly navigated the complex waters of interstellar politics. Lysandra spoke of the foiled plot, of the bravery shown by those who stood against it, and of the lessons learned in its aftermath. And so, Lysandra continued, her gaze sweeping the chamber. "It is with great pleasure that I formally propose the inclusion of Earth in our galactic concord. Their people have proven themselves to be not only capable allies, but also bearers of unique perspectives that can enrich us all." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Ilara felt the weight of countless alien gazes upon her, and she straightened her posture, trying to project an air of confidence she didn't entirely feel. Ambassador Zix glided forward, their liquid metal form shimmering in the chamber's light. "The motion has been proposed. Are there any who wish to speak for or against?" To Ilara's surprise, it was Councillor Vax who stepped forward. The disgraced Astrian, now stripped of his titles and under heavy guard, looked haggard but defiant. "You would invite these primitives into our midst?" Vax sneered, his silver eyes flashing. "They are children playing with forces beyond their comprehension. Their inclusion will be our downfall." Before anyone could respond, another voice rang out, one that Ilara recognized with a jolt of surprise. "And yet, it was this primitive who uncovered your plot and saved countless lives." Heads turned as a holographic projection flickered to life in the center of the chamber. Ilara's jaw dropped as she recognized the face of Dr. Amelia Chen, her mentor from Earth. "Greetings, esteemed members of the Galactic Concord," Dr. Chen said, her voice steady despite the momentous nature of the occasion. "I am Dr. Amelia Chen, speaking on behalf of the United Earth Council. We have been monitoring the recent events with great interest and gratitude." Ilara's mind reeled. How long had Earth known about the wider galactic community? How many others were in on the secret? Dr. Chen continued, "While it's true that our technology may not match yours in many areas, we believe that diversity of thought and approach is a strength, not a weakness. Dr. Vega's actions have demonstrated the unique problem-solving abilities our species can bring to the table." As Dr. Chen outlined Earth's case for inclusion, Ilara felt a swell of pride for her home planet. They had been preparing for this moment, it seemed, working in secret to ensure humanity's readiness for the galactic stage. The debate raged for hours, with representatives from various factions arguing passionately for and against Earth's inclusion. Ilara found herself called upon several times to provide insights or clarify points about human culture and capabilities. Finally, As the Concorde's 3 suns began to set, casting the chamber in a golden glow, the time for decision arrived. "We have heard all arguments," Ambassador Zix announced, their form rippling with anticipation. "Let us now vote on the inclusion of Earth in the Galactic Concorde." Ilara held her breath as the voting commenced. Holographic displays flickered around the chamber, showing a real-time tally of the votes. As the numbers climbed, she felt Lissandra's hand slip into hers, offering silent support. When the final vote was tallied, the chamber erupted in a cacophony of alien sounds, cheers, whistles, and vocalizations Ilara couldn't begin to classify. The motion had passed. Earth was now, officially, part of the galactic community. As the reality of the moment sank in, Ilara felt tears welling up in her eyes. She turned to Lissandra, finding her own emotions mirrored in the Astrian princess's shimmering gaze. "We did it," Ilara whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Lissandra nodded, her bioluminescence pulsing with joy. "No, Ilara, you did it. You've changed the course of history for both our peoples." In the days that followed, Ilara found herself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. There were treaties to be drafted, cultural exchange programs to be established, and countless technological and scientific collaborations to be initiated. But amidst all the chaos, Ilara couldn't shake a growing sense of bittersweetness. Her role as Earth's impromptu ambassador was coming to an end. Soon, official diplomatic teams would arrive to take over the complex task of integrating Earth into the galactic community. It was during a quiet moment, as she stood on a balcony overlooking the sprawling alien cityscape, that Lissandra found her. "Credit for your thoughts?" the Astrian princess asked, coming to stand beside her. Ilara smiled, appreciating the use of the Earth idiom. "Just thinking about what comes next. I'll be heading back to Earth soon. There's so much work to be done, preparing our people for what's to come." Lissandra was quiet for a moment, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "You know," she said finally, "there's still much of the galaxy you haven't seen. The Concorde could use someone with your unique perspective as we navigate this new era of cooperation." Ilara turned to her friend, hope blooming in her chest. "Are you offering me a job, Your Highness?" Lissandra's skin shimmered with amusement. "I'm offering you an adventure, Dr. Vega, as Earth's official scientific liaison to the Galactic Concorde. That is if you're interested in continuing our partnership." A grin spread across Ilara's face. "Are you kidding? Exploring the galaxy, making new scientific discoveries, and probably saving the universe a few more times along the way. Count me in." As they stood there, human and Astrian, looking out at the vast expanse of the galaxy that was now open to them, Ilara felt a profound sense of excitement and purpose. The adventure that had begun with a crashed ship in the Alaskan wilderness had led to this moment, the dawn of a new era for humanity and for the galaxy at large. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever wonders and dangers the cosmos held in store, Ilara knew that they would face them together. As friends, as allies, and as partners in the greatest exploration humanity had ever undertaken. The stars beckoned, and Ilara Vega was ready to answer their call.